I speak a little of your language. Heard if he said no, tired if heard if heard boo.
I was reading Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God the other day, and I struggled with understanding the dialogue. Because there was a strong rural southern dialect, it was hard for me to determine the meaning of each sentence. For example, this particular passage is about the main character Janie telling Phoebe that she can speak for her. But at first I did not understand this. I may have lost some key information about the plot or characterizations due to not understanding the dialogue. This made me wonder, to what extent does our language influence what we can know? Before determining this, it is necessary to define a few key terms. For example, what is language? Steven Pinker claims that language is words, rules, and interfaces, that it is not written, it is not thought, and it is not proper grammar. Therefore, language must be only spoken, natural words. But how can we determine what we can know? Philosopher David Hume, known for his empiricism, claims that all we can know are our own impressions of the world. Our knowledge comes from perception rather than reasoning. While the definition of knowledge is still disputed today, for the purpose of this presentation, this definition will do. It would seem that because language is so embedded into our daily lives, it would influence our impressions of the world and thus what we can know. Like in Their Eyes Were Watching God, the language used in the dialogue may have changed my impression of the novel, thus potentially changing what I know about the novel. Questioning whether or not language shapes thought and knowledge is no new debate. Most famous in this subject is Benjamin Lee Whorf. He first claimed that those who spoke Hopi, a Native American language, saw the world differently than English speakers. Hopi requires one to say how and or when you heard information. For example, I heard that Mary passed the test, compared to just saying Mary passed the test. This could allow for a difference in the extent of one's knowledge. We may know that Mary passed the test, but we don't know how true this information is or where the information came from, like a Hopi speaker could. It is important to note that an English speaker may add this clarification, however, it is not a necessary grammatical structure. Benjamin Lee Whorf and his colleagues called this linguistic relativity, the idea that language influences our thoughts and our world. One of his colleagues, Edward Sapir, said, "We see and hear and experience as we do because the language habits of our community predispose certain choices of interpretation." Renowned linguist Noam Chomsky disapproves of the idea of linguistic relativism. He claims that all languages share a common structure that is hardwired into the brain. This wiring is separate from areas that govern perception or cognition, making it hard for language to have an effect on it. While it is widely believed that language is a biological factor, this does not entirely limit it from cognition. A recent study found that the FOXP2 gene is associated with language. It is also associated with vocal learning in young songbirds, which produce higher levels of FOXP2 proteins when they need to learn new songs. Therefore, a balance between cognition and biological factors can be seen. A more modern study on linguistic relativism noted an Amazonian language called Baraha has no words for exact numbers. They only have words for few and many. If a Baraha speaker needed to know a distinct amount of eggs required for a recipe, for example, how would they know the correct amount? An English speaker would have less difficulty because we have words assigned to each number. However, the Baraha speaker may still know the correct amount, but simply not be able to express their knowledge. In communicating with the speaker, it would still be difficult to understand their knowledge. This thus raises another question. To what extent can meaning be lost in translation? I take French as a foreign language, so I personally know the difficulty in translating from one language to another, but modern studies are focusing on the perception of color. In different languages, there are different words for colors, as one would expect, but it is not always as simple as translating one to another. For example, in English, there is just one word for the color blue. We may classify it as light blue or dark blue, but it is still the same color blue. However, in Russian, dark blue and light blue are two separate words. In a study done by Winnower et al., Russian and English participants were shown the same two sets of colors and asked to determine which colors matched. The first trial had two colors from the same category and one from another. The second trial had all three colors from the same category of blue. The Russian participants did better in the second trial, while English speakers showed no improvement between the two. But how can we know it was language that influenced this outcome? Another trial in the same study was done while having the participants count numbers out loud, thus eliminating their linguistic knowledge access. In this trial, there was no difference in the Russian and the English speakers. This suggests that it was language affecting the outcome. We also see this in languages that have gender-assigned nouns. For example, the word for key is masculine in German and feminine in Spanish. When asked to give the key characteristics, Germans described it as heavy, jagged, and hard, and Spanish described it as golden, intricate, and little. The use of feminine and masculine articles changed the participants' perception of the object. This is, however, biased to our perception of masculine and feminine qualities. But to what extent does our perception of something affect our knowledge of that subject? Referring back to Hume's empiricism, all we can know is based on our experiences and our perception of those experiences. Therefore, our knowledge is directly affected by our perception. Why does this matter? There are 4,000 to 6,000 languages in the world today. Language is in everything we do. It is an expression and is sometimes even deception. The media and arts are full of language and sometimes has what is called doublespeak, or language that only pretends to say something. Examples of this are euphemism, jargon, gobbledygook, and inflated language. Doublespeak can change how we view a particular idea or topic. It is used by companies, politicians, and people everywhere to change how we perceive a certain thing. This can arguably change what we know about this subject, since we may not know the full truth or extent of the issue, and our perception of it can change.
You give it a good shake, darling, just like Mummy.
For God's sake, I'm laying cable.
I need to sink this brown.
Just dropping the kids off at the pool.
Number 2, please.
This clip expresses a common euphemisms for using the bathroom, displaying that not all doublespeak is bad. Some is meant to lighten the subject. But does it still change what we know? Using euphemisms and other forms of doublespeak can sometimes change the meaning. In this case, the meaning hasn't entirely changed, but attitude towards the subject is lightened. But there are scenarios in which the meaning can be changed. For example, an ATM at a bank in Texas was robbed, but rather than calling it a robbery, the bank called it an authorized transaction. If the media were to produce this as accurate information, the people would not know that the bank has in fact been robbed. So we can infer that some cases of doublespeak change meaning, while others may not. In all, it seems that language may not directly influence what we can know, but rather influences our perception, potentially influencing what we know. There seems to be a correlation between language, culture, and thought. However, it cannot be proved entirely. There are some situations where using devices such as doublespeak change what we know, however it is not all situations. There is still more to be explored within this concept, as it is still debated in the field of linguistics today.
I don't think that's a little fella.
Oh, big fella. Whale. Okay. Maybe he only speaks whale.
Dory. What are you doing? What are you doing? Are you sure you speak whale?
Can you
Dory, heaven knows what you're saying. See, he's swimming away.
come back?
He's not coming back. You offended him.
Maybe a different dialect.
Dory. Dory, this is not whale. You're speaking like upset stomach.
Maybe I should try humpback.
No, don't try humpback. All right. You actually sound sick.
Maybe louder, huh?
Don't do that.
Too much orca. Didn't it sound a little orca-ish?
It doesn't sound orca. It sounds like nothing I've ever heard. Oh.